I am here again doing another video. I've had some issues with the location of the video camera. This one made a few observations about love and understanding. And wanted to kind of make a video diary of it so I will not forget it, because from past experiences, when this one made an observation about anything, it was written down, never read again, never experimented with, and nothing really came of it. So this is a new experiment using this video situation. Start virtual camera. Okay. So I'm using this nice streaming device. It's called OBS. It's new to me. Okay, so these are the few observations that this one made. I should play them for you in the order that they were made. And it is a direct connection to resistance. And what does this one mean by that? Okay, remember that when it was spoken about resistance, I forgot to record on this. I'm gonna start again. Okay, so when Phil talked about this, I don't know about Dr. Bob, but Phil did. And what is the connection between resistance I don't know if this is recording. I hope it is. Stop recording. Okay, I hope it's recording. What is the connection between resistance and love? Resistance, I'm going to write it down. Resistance and love, or understanding. Okay. I'll tell you a story about this one's experience with this, working with this situation, resistance and love. When this one was about 11, after the communist revolution, and my father leaving Romania to come to America, this one was going through a very difficult time and subconsciously made a seventh decision, which this one will talk about, and it was mentioned before in the audio that was posted. So the seventh decision to really do the inner work that is required to grow a soul, to look within and grow a soul. So this one, for some reason, understood that the body had a deep connection with this. It couldn't handle what was going on mentally or all the other levels, mentally or emotionally. So it decided to work on it on the body, which is understandable, because when we first come into this world, from the understanding of this one, we do things through the senses. So that is the understanding where that magical infantile mind works on. It works on the senses. So The physical, it was at that age. And this one was involved in sports. My father was a coach for skiing. Here in America, he was a coach for gymnastics. And this one decided, you know what, every morning I'm going to wake up when I can at 4:30 in the morning when everybody's sleeping and go to this mountain that I knew about, Bonku, and stretch. But first I'm gonna start stretching at home. We lived in a beautiful mountain town in Bușteni. So I would stretch at home, and the plan was to either run to the mountain or walk. And during that run or walk, dealing with the resistance and pain and the situation of the body at the level it was, to talk to X or God. And this one did this a few days, and then one day discovered that this one couldn't hold on to that state of being, because this one's state would raise, the body was getting stronger. A lot of reporting would happen with X. When you're a kid, you talk to God and you tell him innocently about things that are happening in life. And this one soon came to the conclusion that it was this resistance that this one couldn't handle. It was too great. The communist revolution just happened. This one had problems or issues in school, getting bad grades. My father was gone. All kinds of other awful things, in this one's opinion, happened. And this one told X, I can't handle the resistance. I don't understand it. That's a big obstacle that would happen. And a communication with X happened where I passed through a window. It was Christmas time. The snow was not in town yet, but when I got to the mountain, the snow was there. And when I passed this window, I saw a beautiful tree, a Christmas tree, in this family's home. And the father was not hanging the bulb. The bulb was a silver bulb, which is a very Romanian thing. Everybody has that bulb in their Christmas tree. But the father was carefully putting presents under the tree. Well, anyway, a lot of parents do that. I think they do that at night. But I did this in the morning, and the night before, I think I went for a walk and I saw him do that at night. So this morning I walked past and I looked through the window and I could only imagine, and I remember this silver bulb. And I remember saying, we have such a beautiful country, Romania. It's a beautiful country. We have beautiful traditions. Those kids got to enjoy their dad for Christmas. I didn't. I can't handle this resistance, I told X. And in that moment, X said, you don't understand it now, but you will. You will. And I says, but when? And he says, around the age of 45. Okay, so I kept going. I couldn't understand resistance. And years passed. I came to America. Of course, I forgot about God. I forgot about a lot of things. I got lost in vanity, really. That's what it is. It's vanity. And this one met Phil. This one heard Dr. Bob's audio tapes, other people who worked with these ideas like Krishnamurti and Gurdjieff and other people. This one read books when he could, when I could. In the back of my mind, this one knew that experience, it remembered, self-remembering, kept going back to that. What does that mean? Where am I? What is going on? This one still doesn't understand resistance. Until a few experiences where a glimpse of this happened. Yes, we work with second force, we work with resistance. And then something happens and we're back at serving the 4 DBUs, we're back at serving that master decision to be non-disturbed, which is this decision. Let me write it down for you. The master decision, which I'm gonna make it look like Adam's apple, because that is the original sin that we were all born into. Where it says, the purpose of living, my purpose for living is to be non-disturbed. So automatically, I always fell into this. We do this subconsciously, mostly because, or as a result of us being weak. You see, the stretching that was done when I was a kid, it was really good for the body. It made the body really strong. So this one could hold on to that real I for a while. But then all these other things would happen emotionally, which is not physically, or mentally, that this one could not handle. So that's the obstruction. That the body is strong. When you're young and you're healthy, it works. It works for the people who have a strong and healthy body. But when something comes along that is mental or emotional, the healthy, strong people can't handle that. So blessed are those who are healthy mentally or emotionally, or for those who are healthy transcendentally and don't desire power. They might not have a strong and healthy body, but when mental or emotional things or things of desire to look for power come along, they can handle it better. This one couldn't handle it. So, okay, this one would fall throughout all these years from that experience when I was a kid. It would subconsciously fall into serving these DBUs, this original sin. These are the DBUs, or mammon. This original subconscious, it's subconscious. It's not a conscious decision. We're all born subconsciously into that, asleep. That's what Adam, bless his soul, did for humanity. Now we're all born into this original sin that Adam and Eve did. And this one would have a few glimpses of consciousness throughout this lifetime. From childhood until now, mid-40s. It was still based on the physical. This one is very healthy physically. Emotionally, mentally, not so much. This one has a lot of troubles, unsolved issues. This one experienced the communist revolution in Romania. This one lived without a dad, but there are people who lived worser lives and they're not so messed up. But this one, for some reason, can't handle certain situations. So in the past, when this one would have these moments of consciousness, he would make the seventh decision. The real I would come to surface. You could pay attention. something would come along, some resistance, probably mentally or emotionally, or a desire for power, and bam, this one would fall off the radar. You would fall off that. Dr. Bob calls it something, but I forgot what Dr. Bob calls it. This one would fall off of the beam, the way, the new purpose for living, which was a conscious new purpose for living. So now this one is older, wiser, decided to do these video diaries instead of just writing down. This one writes down, but it's never reassessed again. And this one now understands this is the beginning. One cannot have a problem with a second force. You pay attention to that second force. And it is based on this understanding that Phil talked about when he said the evolution of man has 4 stages. The first stage is the way of justice. And it was observed that the way of justice is part of personality. Personality that takes over when the unconscious decision takes place. Okay, so we are given this helper, a personality that has 2 sides, a side A and a side B. So this is the physical body over here, corpul in Romanian. This one over here is awareness sau conștiință in Romanian. So what happens is that the impressions, these are impressions, and those are impressions, and these from the body are sensations, right? They come into the body puts a value, or it comes into the awareness. It comes from, see, this is an environment. So impressions go into the awareness from the environment. Of course, the body experiences it because this soul lives in this body. I'm gonna close the window. Hold on. It's very loud. This is Hollywood. So there's a lot of airplanes. Okay, so the body experiences it, right? Because the soul, we come here in the human experience in the physical world with the body. So the impressions go in from the environment. The sensations go into the awareness as well from the body. So right then, there's some resistance because there are some things that we have issues with, and these impressions go in, or sensations from the body, and it is not to our liking, to our taste. So right there and then, the awareness puts a value. One puts a value on this stuff. No, first it puts a truth, right? First it says if these are true. true? It says, is it true? And then second, it puts a value on all this stuff that goes in. That's where this one has some issues. The body is healthy, you see. The sensations that come from the body, they come in. The body is pretty healthy. This one from childhood has been stretching in the morning when it decides to, when I decide to, going for a run. But then there's some mental and emotional things that it cannot handle. For you or for somebody else, it could be vice versa. It could be the other way around. The body could not perhaps be so healthy, but mentally you're extremely healthy and you handle these things. And then when the conversation with X or God happens, see, X is up here. That's God. Mentally, the reporting happens more healthy, because after this truth and value are put on, a feeling develops. See, that's a feeling. And that feeling is what X or God hears. So if somebody is not as healthy mentally or emotionally, or it craves power, it has a strong body, it's very healthy, but it has all these other issues. X or God hears that feeling. It doesn't hear the speaking. What you tell him you think is good for you, you don't know what's good for you. X hears what's in the heart. It hears that feeling. And then God or X does. See, it comes here and it does. This is a function. So X does the appropriate thing for the information received. Okay. The body can be as healthy as one can be. The other levels cannot be overlooked. So anyway, we have the evolution of man. The 4 levels of the 4 DBUs, which are these over here, are, see, I still don't have it memorized, but basically they're on the physical, emotional, mental, and then a transcendental. So I'm gonna keep this separate, see? And okay, so the evolution of man, we were talking about that. This is where all these things connect. So yes, it does feel like you jump from one idea to another. So the physical in this one was healthy. It's just that the other ones were some situations that could not be handled. Okay, so we were talking about the evolution of man. So when this one had that experience as a kid, where it was realized that, yes, I can't handle this resistance. Yes, my body is healthy, but the other sides are not as healthy. I can't handle it. I don't know. And This resistance could not be dealt with. So personality took over. The helper that was given to us here on earth. Eve personality. And I wanted to say something about the way of justice. It will come to me. Okay. So, this one would fall off of that radar, right? The real I would not stay observing. The observing I would not be present for too long due to this, as a result of not being able to handle this different resistances growing up. This one lived in an infantile mind, and rightfully so, because the logical mind doesn't get activated, or the body of a child is not developed to the point where the logical mind can function for too long. So this one could not live by the way of understanding, which is this third way over here. The way of understanding or love. So this one would tell X or God, look, I can't. In the back of my mind, throughout all these years, getting older, I remember that, and I remember what you told me, that one day I will understand. That one day when this one had that experience, it was communicated that it was love that this one has a problem with. You cannot love, God said. So this one would keep falling back to either side A, which is the way of justice. Way of justice. Or side B over here, which is the second way of evolution, which is the way... Wait, hold on. This is not the way of justice. I always make this mistake. The way of survival. Way of survival. And I would go to the way of justice, which would be on the side B over here. This one would experience that consciousness because the body was so strong and healthy, but the real I would come to surface for just enough time to have a conversation with God and get to a certain level of the states of being. And this one would fall off the radar at some point because, or as a result of, the body is not developed at that age, 11, 12. The logical mind cannot be supported. And this one, just the body was not developed. For some reason, this one cannot handle things that are emotional or mental or transcendental. He can handle physical things. So resistance was understood, had a connection with this way of understanding or love. When you get older, the body gets weaker. You understand things better. Got wiser. So now, after practicing love, loving your children, this one is beginning to understand what was meant, that you can't love. When this one met Phil said the same thing. I would tell you what to do, but you can't do it because you can't love right now. And it sounds silly because when you look at a kid, their love is so pure, they're so young. But something happens inside that it cannot be withheld for too long. The kid is true, they're innocent, they do love. But something happens and it works against them. The resistance is too great. They live in a world where love is not really valued. When this one experienced communism, yes, I did love, I was innocent. But the resistance became so great that, yes, this one had this personality that kind of took over. And this one began to, make all these decisions, to complain, to stick up for rights, to please, to get my way, because this one kept falling back on this DBUs down here, this original sin, to be non-disturbed. This one didn't understand why we had to say good morning to a picture of Ceausescu on the wall, or to wear these uniforms and have this red flag. It's ridiculous, this one thought. To this one, that was a big resistance. And over the years, it kind of like messes with your head. Not just those particular ideas of communism, but seeing that every day when you wake up. Is that really reality? Or is it something that somebody else tells me to believe in? So yeah, you learn to please. You learn to listen to authorities. You learn to, number 5 over here, to self-improve. And eventually on this other side, you learn to blame. So, of course that this conflict happened and it can't be avoided. That's the thing. No matter how close one is with God, this one was very close to God. It could not stay. This one could not stay on that way, on that, Dr. Bob calls it something, on that straight way. So the conflict is there. Now you have two sides. So these sides are always there, you see? And they're expressed all over the place. Even in the world, not just inside man. generation after generation, in the old times, they had the Jews and the Gentiles, this division. In America, you have the Republicans and the Democrats, a big decision between a whole population of people. In Romania, of course, you had communists, which was more like this B-side of justice, way of justice. See, the communists came along and they says about fascists before, how could you do that? We need to seek justice. And then you had the other side, the Nazis. That was all about a very violent way of living, of survival, that killed so many people so they can get the power. Who is the strongest survives. That's what that first way of evolution says. It doesn't matter. Whoever is the strongest, that's who survives. And then, of course, the second way comes along and they says, oh, no. Let's live by the way of justice. So in communism, which this one experienced, we were taught from little kids that we need to pay, we need to self-improve. See, that's what number 5 says. We need to self-improve ourselves. We can't be violent. So we were taught to put the violence within. We need to better ourselves. We need to improve ourselves. We need to always give justice. And this one was so overwhelmed with being forced to live on that B side, the way of justice, that in a way this one didn't think she was allowed any other way. You're not allowed to think on the way of survival. Oh, how dare you? How dare you be like a Republican? That's not allowed. See, the Republicans are more like on a side A, you see? Everybody for themselves. Like the Nazis, when you take it to real radical side A, then it turns into a Nazi. America is very healthy in that way because it doesn't become too radicalized. You have the Republicans on side A and you have the Democrats on side B, but it doesn't go so far right and so far left where it becomes fascism or communism, because every 4 years you vote for a new president who could be on the opposite side. So America is really intelligent that way. The founders of America, they must have known about the teaching. They must have been some conscious, intelligent people, because America is made in such a way that that could never happen. So this one was from a country that didn't have that. This one was from a country where if one side decided to be in power, they became a dictator for like 40 some years, like Ceausescu was. So this one could not make that leap, see, to the way of understanding, which is what Jesus taught. Now it says that there is another fourth way, which is the way of consciousness or love. Or understanding. Love, understanding. That's interesting that I wrote the way of consciousness. It's actually the way of love or understanding. It's also called the way of intelligence. Because it is said that, if one lives in the way of Wait. I made a complete mistake. I must be tired. It's not the way of love or understanding. No. That's the third way. The fourth way is the way of intelligence or consciousness, okay? Because it is said that if one lives by the way of understanding and practices that every day when one wakes up, it watches these not eyes, it disidentifies, it makes a new purposeful living that would replace this old purposeful living to be non-disturbed. See this one, this original sin, and does the teaching, then it is said that one is transformed by this love into a new man that lives life with infinite intelligence. It has no obstruction. All these things that this one was dealing with, when the impressions and the sensations would go into awareness from the environment and the body, and it was reported to X, there was some obstruction there. This one could not handle it. This one was, in a way, forced to live by this B side, the way of justice in a communist country. There was a lot of obstruction, but it is a promise that if this one practices this love and understanding and does the work, disidentifies from all these not eyes, see all these complaints, stick up for not rights, please, listen to authorities, or self-improve, these are all not eyes. They're not you. The Screw Tape Letters, a book written by C.S. Lewis, it's a book of a demon that is just about these not eyes. And this is what this one is or has been dealing with for many, many years, to live by this way of understanding, practice it, and there is an obstruction because it is work. Living by the way of love and understanding is something that one decides to do consciously. It doesn't just come automatically. See these other two sides, side A and side B? They happen automatically. It was, or it is our moștenire is in Romanian. Moștenire. It is our, what? How do you say moștenire in English? Moștenire. It is our heritage? No, it's not our heritage. It is our legacy. It is our inheritance. Side A and side B happen automatically. It is our inheritance that have happened from generation to generation. From the time of the first man ever, Adam. Now, moving on to this third way of evolution, which is living by the way of love. It's something that one makes a decision to do that. Isn't that interesting? Although it is said that, Jesus died for our sins. In a way, in a way, eventually down the line, this third way of evolution, it will be an automatic thing as well. It would be part of the inheritance. But right now, I don't think it's at the level in this one where it can be an automatic thing. We have in children's schools, they are taught, oh, you know, you need to be considerate. Even in America, you go to many schools and they teach the Native Americans were mistreated in this country. You need to be considerate. So it is something very similar to what the communists taught. And to be honest with you, these two sides, I think they're good. They're not bad. I think that communist experiment in Europe, it tried, or it was an experiment to bring the people to move on to another level. It didn't necessarily work because communism became very corrupt. But in America, it's not corrupt because over here you can still be something else. You're given a choice. You can be that. It's there for you. If you want to be considerate, it's very valuable. Now this third way of evolution, no, the second way of evolution, sorry, the way of justice, it was brought down by Moses. At the time when it was brought down, when it was brought to the awareness of humanity, they thought it was amazing. And the same with Europe. Originally, they thought communism was good. They had enough of all these kings and tsars from Russia. Communism was good, but something happened down the line where it became corrupt. It became a dictatorship, and everybody in power were rich while everybody else was expected to be equal. And this is what one gets when one deals with personality. These two sides, the first side and the second. And the second side are part of personality. When you get to this third way of evolution, then you move away from personality. This one, in a way, was forced to stay in personality, living in this communist environment where the only thing you're allowed to do is live by that way. The way of justice. If you mention to them, oh, you know what, I really want to grow a real eye and think for myself. Think for yourself. That's not allowed. What are you talking about? You know what happened to the intellectuals? How many intellectuals ended up in communist prisons? I have this obsession with Africa, right? This happened there too. You know, by how many countries Africa was colonized by? The resistance that those people went through. And they were sold into slavery in America. It's something that this one likes to study, the African situation. Because it is very similar to what happens all over the world. These two sides are forever present in anything, within and without. And you had this man, the Jesus, who came here on earth, and he offered us a third way, a way out. But it's a requirement that you practice love for yourself and for the next door neighbor. And this is what brings me to this experiments that this one has been working on, observations about this love. And I'm going to take a break, and then I will talk about these observations that were made, because I think that they're really amazing, and this one really wants to hold on to this, because it is a way out, this third way of evolution, the way of love. And it's the only way in which that real I, the observing I, can get stronger. And this one is really interested in that. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I was talking about this understanding or love, huh? That's a tough one, huh? Phil says that humanity right now is in this third way of evolution, trying to create its form. Because the resistance, the four forces. Says 1, you initiate, initiative. 2, it says resistance. 3, a form gets created. And 4, you see the result. Now, Phil says that humanity is right here. It's barely trying to create its form. And from watching or listening to his tapes, these four forces go hand in hand with this evolution of man, where first force is the way of survival, 2 is the way of justice, 3 is the way of love or understanding, and 4 is the way of intelligence or consciousness. So if humanity is barely trained to create its form, barely touching this, living by the way of love or understanding, which is what Jesus taught. And we know that Moses brought that. I'm sure about this one. Now, this way of intelligence has been talked about for many years now. That way of intelligence is interesting, but you can't just jump to that way of intelligence. I think this one is going to talk about the way of understanding. So this one is barely attempting to create my form, according to this. So I wanted to show you a few observations that were made by this one. They were mostly recorded because it's so much faster and easier. July 15. Okay, perfect. This one was July 7. Okay, so let me play this one. Hi. Today is July 7, 2024, and I just had a realization about resistance. And I mentioned in the past that this one has a problem with resistance. I saw it on the surface of things, but I didn't get too deep in it to understand the situation, to understand. Today, a small realization just came while I was just doing some work, and that was, what does this one mean by having a problem with resistance? In the mid-40s, this one is beginning to realize that I get heart palpitations. For a while, this one blamed it for, oh, you know, I did too much sports when I was a kid, or it was my upbringing, or this or that. No, the situation is that this one has a problem with resistance, meaning it's not just one reason to blame. It's not because, oh, you know, I grew up in Romania, so it was very tough there, you know, we had a hard time. Or, oh, you know, I did sports. It's this one developed some bad habits growing up. Resolved to a certain emotion of envy instead of dealing with the work that was necessary to get something done. This one went to envy. Envy because others are better, or feeling insecure that this one was not matching up to their level. So it has a connection to those emotions in the vicious cycle that was drawn a few weeks ago. That is what the problem is with the resistance. This one did not deal with resistance to do the work necessary. So this one fell into the emotions, feeling inadequate, feeling inferior, feeling insecure, and over time those developed into like certain groups of not I's or certain parts of personality, and I forgot the word. It's not adaptation. This one had assimilation over time, where, oh, this reminds me of that, so therefore this must be just like that. And over time that was repeated over and over until now this one has heart palpitations because, well, it's not a reason to blame. I can't say, oh, because of that. But as a result, from not dealing with resistance properly by looking at it with understanding to understand the situation. Okay, if I want to do this, this is required that I put in this type of work. This one can't be insecure about it. You need to deal with resistance. That was not done. A little bit was conditioning from childhood. A little bit was the environment that I was in. Romania is not like other countries. Of course, growing up in communist Romania. But most of it was what this one, how the way that this one dealt with the resistance at that particular time. To give you an example, I see a lot of kids, whenever they have a hard time coming up, they start whining. Especially my younger son, he whines. He goes like this, he goes crazy. My other son doesn't do that. My other son deals with resistance for the same exact thing. And when it comes to other situations, my younger son deals with the resistance, but my older son can't handle it. So this is what this one meant, a problem with resistance. It was something unresolved on a certain level, mental, physical, emotional, or transcendental of the 4 DBUs, dual basic urges. Something that was not understood, the reality was not seen. And this one fell, or what's the proper word? This one fell on personality instead of dealing with that particular resistance in that moment and paying attention with that observing eye and see what is going on here, dealing with the resistance on the level of understanding, to understand what is going on and put in the work necessary to do that particular thing. That's all. I wanted to put this note in about resistance and what this one means by having a problem with resistance. So it's, instead of looking at resistance in that particular moment with understanding and dealing with it, this one recluded to, or decided to let personality take care of it by feeling envious, falling on these emotions, or feeling insecure, getting angry. And that is not intelligent. Bye.
Okay. So it is something that reoccurs, right? The desire is there to live by the way of understanding. And what I was talking about when I said have that real eye, it was mentioned before, but there is over here a 7th decision. When one says, I'm going to move this up here. It is important that I live now. I want to be aware, alive. So that 7th decision, it's a new purpose. And this is a way out, because this one looks at this, which is a subconscious, original purpose of living, which was our inheritance. We are born into this. It is sometimes called the original sin, because Adam and Eve took a bite out of that tree of knowledge of good and evil, and now we live life thinking that we know best. It's so typical of personality. And now for the rest of my life, my plan is to, for once in a while, sometimes I live on this side A, the way of survival, and I'm very violent, and I get and I take. And then after a while, subconsciously, I switch. It automatically does this. It switches. And for a while, I live on side B. Oh, I have to be right and just and blah, blah, blah. That is when one serves this mammon, this original purpose of living, to be non-disturbed. And so that bite from that fruit is stuck in our throat. You can't You can't really remove it. The great book, the Bible, says that Eve swallowed it, but with Adam, it got stuck in his throat. Eve, standing for personality, is willing to serve this mammon. It has no problem becoming the wife of the devil. While Adam, that stands for the spirit, he knows not to give himself fully to that mammon. He didn't really swallow this original sin. So through the spirit, when this seventh new decision happens, when Adam deep down with feeling says, I want to be aware, I want to be alive, I can't live by that original purpose of living to be non-disturbed all the time. All I do is I get all these 4 DBUs. I get pleasure on the physical level. I get on the emotional, I always get these two confused. To get attention and or escape being ignored. And on the mental is like I want to feel important and to avoid being insignificant or not important, or I want power. Do I really want to live my life like that for the rest of my life, subconscious? And then once in a while, side A comes up, and then I live in there for a while subconsciously, and I think, oh yeah, I'm getting somewhere now. I'm getting success in my career, blah blah blah. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna I don't know, have sex with people so I can get a good job, or marry somebody for their money. And then after a while, this other side pops up, and they're like, oh no, but we need to be just. We cannot do that. We need to self-improve. That is not Christian. And then he goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until you die one day. So the seventh decision says, you know what? I don't want to live like that anymore. And that seventh decision, in this one's opinion, requires a look at this basic purpose of living, that you don't want to be searching for that non-disturbance. You don't want to serve this mammon with this earthly world has to offer you. It's nice to enjoy it once in a while, but to have so much greed to just want that. I'm gonna wake up in the morning and all I want to eat whatever my pleasures want. Can you imagine to have all the foods you want? And to escape that resistance. Oh, it disturbs me. But in a way, this side A and side B, in a way, this one thinks that they're good, because this conflict going back and forth, and you realizing that you just live to fulfill this hunger and feasting on these DBUs without this, and you realizing, hey, do I really want to do that? Well, let me try this other way. Let me look at resistance. Let me look at this second force that I feel and I'm trying to escape so much, and that I replaced the second force. Yeah, let me move it up here. I wanted to escape it. For what? So I can get some DBU, some dual basic urge to, or any urge on any level, physical, mental, emotional, transcendental. Let me look at this resistance. Let me experience it. Maybe it's not so bad after all. When one serves this basic purpose of living, to be non-disturbed, this
Adam's apple over here. It is a controlling of that pain, what we considered pain, which is resistance. So you control it. And then there's tension in the back. This one noticed. There's tension in the back because I'm trying to control the discomfort. If I bend over, oh, my back feels, I feel the resistance. So let me control it. So there's tension in the back because I try to control. That's what personality does. Personality is all about control, power. And when the seventh decision is made, another observation was made about this seventh decision is that this seventh decision cannot be connected to this basic purpose of living. For a while, my new seventh decision was, I want to be a famous actor. To fulfill what? So I can get more attention and escape being, I don't know, like insignificant. So it was still serving Mammon. So this seventh decision perhaps cannot be coming from this personality. Even though we think that all we are is personality, we are not personality. There is something real within us. Some real I. See, the real I is around here, right next to the ego. See, the ego is covering the real I. Or chooser. The real I is covered up. So the real I needs to like slowly, just like, bam. The real I, see, when the ego takes the place of the real I, because resistance is so unpleasant, the real I kind of like takes a hike. Let's say that this is the real I. It takes a hike outside of the body. So it hangs around the body, hangs around, floating around, just going along with personality. Now, when this seventh decision is made over here, the real I begins to slowly come back and is saying, you know what, let me look at this pain. Let me look at this thing that this chooser is controlling right now. This, when I bend over, serving these DBUs, the ego saying, oh, I know what needs to be done next. So there's tension in the body trying to control that feeling of discomfort. So the real I is like, well, let me look at that discomfort. And the real I now is beginning to like be here next to the chooser, next to the chooser, next to the chooser, and growing. And this seventh decision is this real I on the outside watching in is made by that real I. This seventh decision is not made by personality, which is this chooser, this little part here that I drew. And pain begins to be experienced. And then you watch the four forces. And then you look and you're like, what is this second force too? Because see, sometimes this resistance is also called second force. And the initiative is called first force. The form is third force. The result is fourth force. So the real I is now beginning to observe these forces and begins to value this resistance. Well, why is it that there is resistance here? Why does my back hurt when I bend over like that? Let me not try to control it. and you look at that resistance. And then the pain is there. It's not that when you accept resistance that all the troubles are gone. It's just that the controlling of it is gone. Part of that control requires to look at accepting what is. I accept this pain. I accept that the body hurts when I lean over. I accept it. I accept what is. I'm getting old. The back hurts now. Small things like this throughout the day, small experiments that can be done watching this second force. So I'm just going to look at the next video that I did of observation. July 7th. This is July 11th.
Okay, the realization that I don't know what should be, or in other words, accepting what is the way it is. Anna, or this one, has the tendency to subconsciously try to control everything. And that goes against working with second force or resistance. And that realization and the decision, it's more of a decision, you see, to decide, I don't want to live the rest of my life serving these 4 dual basic urges of being non-disturbed. I don't want to live like that for the rest of my life. That was the request, followed by X taking the action. So X did the next thing. The next thing is that realization that Anna is not in control here. X does. And working with second force or resistance, and even accepting resistance in one's life, requires this realization, or is it a decision that says, I don't know what should be. I am not in control here. And there's an acceptance of what is the way it is. And then pain, or what Anna thought it was painful, is not, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It was felt like pain before making this decision, as a result of always subconsciously serving those 4 dual basic urges, serving mammon, based on that subconscious decision to seek non-disturbance, which is the original sin in which we are all born into. It is an amazing thing to work with resistance. And one, or for this one in particular, working with resistance requires this master decision of being undisturbed to be reevaluated. And the only way that worked for this one to reevaluate that master decision is to realize that this one is not in control. This one is not really in charge. X, or God, does. If this one asks X or reports to X that this one doesn't want to serve those 4 dual basic urges. And once one sees that, oh, Anna is not in charge here, and the desire to not be in charge, and accepting what is, all these things go hand in hand. Accepting what is, I feel, this one feels, it's a requirement to working with second force. It's the only thing that has worked. And here we are, moving along, practicing the way of understanding. And that observing eye getting stronger and stronger. It's a wonderful thing to live in that reality.
Okay. So, I wrote it here, accepting what is. That was the observation that was made. In this new change, where this 7th decision is made, accepting what is another valuable point that needs to be looked at. And realizing that we are not in control, that X does. Well, when I spoke about it this earlier, is that so X is here. When the impressions and suggestions come into the awareness and the feeling gets formed, that is what X hears and what is reported to X automatically, then X always does. See, X always does. I should put here always, because nobody else does except X. And when the real I makes this new 7th decision, comes back more in the body, paying attention to all the mess in this house, this awareness, this body that this awareness lives in. Accepting what is very valuable, because the ego, or the chooser, which is up here, this ego, it goes against that acceptance of what is. It says, I know what ought to be. That's what the ego does. The ego is very interesting. What's happening in the inner man is replaced. The ego is more like the devil that replaced Adam, which is the spirit, and and with which Eve, the personality, is having an affair with. So the ego is not looking out for the interests of the spirit, of course. The spirit being the real I, Adam, who is being cheated on by personality and this ego that sits on the throne of man and tells X what ought to be, because he cannot accept what is. So the real I can accept what is, you see? And that's another great observation. I'm gonna go to the next one. So what is very valuable to notice and accept. Accept what is, basically. And July 14, feeding on the 4 basic urges versus feeding on love. Okay.
So it's really late at night on July 14, 2024. And another great realization about the second force and serving the 4 DBUs is that this one has been thinking in terms of cause and effect. If I practice love, then this will happen. And that's not necessarily the case. This discovery that was made is saying that instead of serving the 4 dual basic urges and getting pleasures and gaining attention and gaining approval, gaining power and escaping all the disapproval, pain, being ignored and feeling powerless. So instead of serving those 4 dual basic urges to get that non-disturbance, instead of serving mammon, make a decision or decide that a new purposeful living, a useful purposeful living, needs to be not based on serving these 4 dual basic urges, but rather living in love to help people in that love or through love or in love. Therefore, the observing eye getting stronger by feeding on that love based on this new purpose of living, to live in this love, instead of feeding on pleasures, on that basic purpose, unconscious basic purposeful living to be non-disturbed. So there's a switch. It could be confused with cause and effect. If I don't serve mammon or getting these pleasures, getting this non-disturbance, or forcing it by saying, if I do this, then that will happen, that's thinking in a cause and effect. It could be confused because it is a black and white situation. But think of it rather, instead of cause and effect, if this, then that. basing it on a decision that is told to X or God, reported to X or God, that look, I can't live like this anymore. Feeding on this pleasure is not to this one's advantage, and rather X showing an alternative, which is what X has to offer, feeding you with love. So instead of being conned by Mammon saying, oh, come and feed on this pleasure, and then it's almost like masturbation. You do it, but then when the climax happens, or when you get the pleasure, you feel the same way that you felt before you didn't have the pleasure. And rather experiencing the love that X feeds me with as an alternative to what Mammon offers me, which is pleasure. X is feeding this one with love, and the new purposeful living to be based on that, spreading that love to anybody that comes in contact with this one. So instead of responding to people with a not I part of personality by blaming that person or being annoyed at that person, feeling superior to a person or inferior, instead of responding with that personality, why not take this new food that is received from life, from X, from God, and sharing that feeling of love? It would be an amazing place, and it would be an amazing contribution that could be made. And that is one big discovery. This one has looked at working with this second force and getting out of serving these Mammon or DBUs, or this desire to get non-disturbance, thinking, I can't look to serve these 4 DBUs. Instead, I need to practice love. And it's true, you do practice love. You pretend that you know how to love, and eventually it will be experienced. So it is in a way dealing with it on a cause and effect level. I can't do this, therefore I'm gonna do that, or I'm gonna stop doing this, hoping that I will get that. So it's not looking at it through the 4 forces. But it's a beginning, at least. Well, this discovery, this one came to this new realization through, in a way, practicing a cause and effect situation. I can't serve Mammon because I want to practice love, or feeling guilty that, oh my God, I got that pleasure again and I feel so bad. I know it's wrong for me to get pleasure, but I chase it anyway. When something amazing happened this evening, where I told X, I just reported to X, reported to God, I don't want this pleasure anymore. It's not getting me anything. It promises me that I'm gonna feel better, but after I get the pleasure, I feel sometimes even worse than I did before. Especially when I eat some chocolate because I'm like, I want that pleasure, that amazing taste in my mouth. Sometimes I feel nauseous after eating chocolate and getting that pleasure. So X heard, and an experience of love happened. And it's a realization that says, serving the DBUs is not to this one's advantage. But feeding on love, serving X, is much more advantageous because that love can be shared with others. There could be a new purpose for living. A purpose that says, instead of feeding off and taking that pleasure and feeling superior to others on all 4 levels, because that's why it's called the 4 DBUs. It handles, when one serves those 4 DBUs or mammon, one lives in personality. One must feel superior, so one doesn't feel inferior. One must feel important. One must feel that pleasure on the physical level. Instead of feeding off of these pleasures by hurting other people, why not have X share his infinite love through this one and this one's body, and sharing that love with others instead of responding to everybody from personality, to instead make a contribution to help others experience this exchange of energy, which is love. To me, that is a much more advantageous reality and situation. But one does not believe that unless one experiences it. So it helps to report to X that, look, I don't want to serve this original sin that Adam and Eve did in the original sin when they ate out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and their eyes were opened and they thought they knew everything themselves, and they thought that they're in control of everything. Why not just surrender and say, you know what, X, I don't know anything. Why don't you show me? And the alternative to being unconscious to that original sin is living in the infinite love that the Creator has as food. The temptation is still there to want to serve the DBUs, but it's a silly temptation because in a way it's not real. Yes, I do taste the chocolate, but it doesn't actually make me feel better. it's a con game. Yes, I do want to wear makeup and feel important, which would be on the level of, there are 4 levels. One is physical, one is emotional, one is mental, and one is transcendental. But all these things, eventually, even if this one gets these DBUs to a certain level, nothing gets accomplished. There is no purpose for life. Like deep down in the heart, this one is not happy. In spite of having all these DBUs fulfilled. But surrendering that to the alternative, which is what X has to offer, which is not in this material world, but it's love. He is infinite love. And deciding to have a new purpose that would be useful, perhaps connected to the teaching. It wouldn't be intelligent to have a purpose that's connected to material gains, because that would, in a way, serve those DBUs. But having a purpose, for example, to keep the mood up, or when one experiences that new food from X, to say, you know what if I share this love with the world? What if I, instead of responding to people with personality, what if I share some of this abundant, infinite food that X gives me, which is love, share it with everybody around me and pray for them if they're going through a hard time? Isn't that an amazing alternative? And then more comes, because X is infinite. So as much as I give, a lot more comes. And then I don't feel empty in the heart anymore. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel ADHD. I don't feel OCD. I just live in that love. And it's an amazing feeling, and it's in the present, and it's accepting what is as is. But I guess when one is living in personality, serving those DBUs, one in a way lives at that level, and one does not have a relationship with X. One does not talk to X. So it is a situation of cause and effect. If this, then that. Until a reporting happens to God. Praying is advantageous. One needs to tell God what they want, so they can be brought out of those serving that mammon. Because X does. We think that we are all powerful and then we need to bring ourselves out of this thing, but ultimately, X or God does it, but we need to tell him that we want out. It's an amazing feeling to live in love. And it's true, it is very tempting to serve the DBUs, and a lot of work is required. And sometimes when This one falls back and serves those DBUs. The observing eye just like, I don't know, starts floating out of the body. The real eye is like, oh, just not even present. And it is very tricky, but it's so simple. That's why even Jesus said, let the children come to me, because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's simple. It's not complicated. One needs to tell X what they want and to value receiving the food from X instead of this other food that the DBUs promise to give me, but ultimately I'm not the one feeding. It's a feast from being drained in a way. I think I'm feeding on these pleasures and what mammon has to offer, but it's not true. People feed off of me, and there's all kinds of like demons floating around, and we all feed off of each other, and it's like so stressful. And then we fight, and it's a big mess. When it's so simple, what X has to offer is so much greater than this satanic situation that these pleasures promise to offer. Love is amazing. I love it. That's all I wanted to say. Let's hope that we all live in love more and more, and that we value that more than the alternative, which is satanic. It's unclean. It's hard to explain. That's why people talk about Satan, the devil. We choose the devil instead of this amazing other thing, which is infinite love, and it's peace, and it's sharing that with the world. So let's be careful. Be careful.
Okay, so here's an example of why it helps to orally talk about this stuff and perhaps write it down somewhere where it can be seen, is that the very thing, all the things that I've been talking about so far was kind of repeated in that report, in that realization that I filmed. So it does help to talk about this stuff, record it, write it down, keep track of it, draw it, anything, and then revisit it, because it is kind of like a performance. The more you do it, the more it is repeated, the more it's seen, the more it is performed inside, and the more the value is seen. Hey, is this to my advantage to serve these 4 DBUs, to live by that unconscious purpose of living, to be non-disturbed and serve this mammon, or this earthly things, serving this things here on earth, that it's just like a temporary place. The real world is the spiritual world. Another thing that I realized is that all these things that I'm observing is basically, which is a note I want to make for myself, is the real world versus the man-made world, which I plan to observe that at some point. This one feels that it goes hand in hand to the 4 Great Games, which was a plan to observe it, perhaps see what other teachers had to say about it, like Phil or Bob. Hey, why not? Okay, so that was kind of like a self-explanatory. It was a very long observation, and it basically did say the situation about looking at cause and effect versus the 4 forces, looking at the new 7th decision. One thing that was reported that I didn't talk about is that, and this is very valuable to remember, when the 7th decision is made, if at some point it still serves this basic purpose of living to be non-disturbed by, by saying, I want to be famous, it's still basically serving the basic purpose of living to some degree. And it works for a while. The real I wants to pay attention, you take care of yourself, your skin, you really take care of yourself, you want to live. But for the ultimate reason to still seek power, you're still serving a DBU. You want to feel important or powerful. You want to be famous. And one great discovery that was made, which assists the real I into coming in the body and paying attention for a longer period of time without falling asleep, is to make this new purpose for living, this new decision, the 7th decision, where yes, I want to be aware, alive, to base it on something that doesn't serve an urge. Keep the mood up is another good one. And then realized, I made this great realization that I'm feeding off of these 4 dual basic urges. See this? I'm feeding off of them. But what X has to offer in terms of food is much greater. There's that story in the Exodus when Moses took God's people out of Egypt, and God offered them manna, which is food from heaven, that it rained down from heaven for free. And they didn't want it. They had everything from X. X gave them the most amazing food to feast on, and yet they still went to serving the DBUs. They still went to that basic purpose of living, to be non-disturbed. And they built that big bull made of gold. Now, is that to one's advantage? Is it to my advantage to feed on what the DBUs have to offer? Eat the chocolate because it makes my mouth water? For what does it profit a man to sell his soul, to gain the whole world but lose his soul? This idea has come to us in many different ways. First, in the story with Moses, when God gave his people manna from heaven, which was this infinite love. This is what X, or God, feeds us with, is love. X is infinite love. So saying, do I want to feed on these DBUs? Serve that basic purpose of living, to be non-disturbed? Or make this 7th decision to my advantage? Feed off of the food that X gives me, which is love. Practicing that love. We live unconsciously in these 2 sides,
And you keep telling God with feeling, this is not good enough for me. I want to feed on the manna that you gave the Jews in the desert, and they didn't want it. I want that. I don't want to sell my soul to Mammon. For what? For a taste of chocolate? For some pleasures of life? For some approval and attention? I want to feed. I want to feast on this food that you offer me, which is love. And it's very specific, because this new decision, this new purpose of living, you live by sharing this abundance of food that you receive from God with everyone around you. So no matter what you do, you can still do the fame, which is insignificant at this point. Because everything you touch, you're sharing that love with other people. You live in that love. And everything you touch, everyone you come in contact with is affected and touched, and in a way feeds off of you, instead of you giving out all these demons, which is you're feasting off of these urges, and then you're giving that out to people when you're like, you son of a, you get angry with them and you get fights. Instead of sharing that, now you have a new purpose of living. You're aware, you're alive. It's a new conscious purpose. Okay, I want to look at the next. So that was on July 14. How about July 15? What did I say then? Hi, today is July 15, 2024. And I've been having a very difficult time, like as usual, being stuck in serving those 4 DBUs. And I had another realization last night. Okay, and I'm going to add it to the video diary about resistance. And I wanted to touch bases today because so many things, so many amazing good things have happened. So many good, amazing things have happened since that great decision that was made last night. Where today I look at the other project that I started, where subconsciously this one would serve those urges. And they seem meaningless to me. They don't hold as much value, and this one is convinced that the way of love is the only way. There is no other way. That the way of love is the way in the kingdom of God. It seems to me that this one always battles these 2 different worlds, the spiritual world and the man-made world. The desire is there to acquire the things that the man-made world offers fame, fortune, having rings, shiny things, putting makeup on the face, enjoying the pleasures of the earth. Okay, so yes, the desire is there to serve that man-made world. But every single time this decision was made, where this one says, I don't want to serve those urges. I don't want to do that. And then X takes action and shows me a glimpse of the other world and feeds me with love, that amazing energy. And the more I feed on that food that he gives whenever the attention, and even when subconsciously, I think he still works at it. Whenever this one gets another dose of that, the more the man-made world becomes insignificant. And then at the same time, the man-made world is there, the urges are still there waiting on the platter. There's chocolate, there's sex, well, orgasms, all these pleasures. The temptation is there to say, I really want that. I want to enjoy the pleasures of life. And then it becomes an obsession about gaining those pleasures, having rings, having all these dresses in my closet, perfumes, makeup, blah, 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 electronics, cameras. It's a different type of feeding. One thing that was observed from last night until today was that, okay, so the more I get a glimpse of that love, the more I feed on that type of food. It is a feeding similar to that of feeding on the urges. The more the physical world is seen for what it is, it becomes more insignificant. And I'm going to try this again because my kids called me and I got interrupted. Oh yeah. So, like I was saying, yes, the physical world, the more I get a glimpse of that love from the spiritual, real world, the more things in the physical world become like irrelevant. Yes, I do enjoy coffee, but I'm not obsessed with it. I don't have to have it all day. I can have a taste of it until I get its benefits, the energy that it offers. And then I can move on to the new purpose, which replaced the old subconscious purpose of always seeking non-disturbance. So these small things began to be observed from last night until today, that yes, they do become insignificant, the things in this world. All these like makeup brushes. What? I never use them. I never put makeup on. And whatever, if I do, for what purpose? Why? To get attention, to get men to flirt with me. I look like a clown, but whatever. I keep them. I don't really use them. But these things in this physical world become like, okay, yeah, I have all this stuff that I have accumulated over the years. But now, in the back of everything, in the back of the head, is this new purpose. Please, X, I want to feed on that love, on that everlasting food that you have to offer, on and it feels good. And it's constant, it's always there with me, and it offers freedom in comparison to the other food that I have been feeding on, which was based on these urges. A taste of coffee. I love coffee from morning until nighttime, and then getting indigestion, and then my head starts spinning, or eating chocolate, or having an obsession with some man because I think he's so handsome. And it takes serving those DBUs kind of like drains the energy out of this one. And it's like, it becomes that the machine feels that it has to be in overdrive to be able to accumulate all these things, because the machine is in control. It wants power. So this real spiritual, this real world of spirit, it's saying, or it makes this one feel that there's a new purpose now. I'm feeding on that love. That's my new food. I want to do something too. I want to serve the Creator. What can I do for Him? And yes, it's true, I do have these makeup brushes. I do have this desire to still get these worldly things, but it's like I do it after I do the real thing. It feels that now the driving force is that real thing. I keep taking, I keep eating at this love. I feed on it. But I also want to have something to offer as well. So it feels like now there are these two worlds, the physical world and the spiritual world. Maybe find a way to live in this physical world and combine both of them. But it is a thing where the real world is leading now. So I do that. Everything is based on that love. Eventually, hopefully one day, being transformed and being conscious, living in infinite intelligence. A psychologist once told me, it was a very nice lady, she said, because I dealt with this for my whole life. And she said, find a way to combine them. In acting, I used the stage name LeMay because I kept getting hurt. All this rejection, all this things I was trying to get, all these urges. There was the old me, Anna. And she said something that I think was very intelligent. She says, find a way to combine them. In my head, in my infantile mind, because the logical mind is not activated when you serve these DBUs. It's impossible. The logical mind is not there. Perhaps the logical mind works on a different level of the spirit. But in the infantile mind, this one was thinking in terms of cause and effect. It's either or. It's either the physical world or the spiritual world. Oh, if I do the spiritual world, I cannot function in the physical world. And but that's not exactly the way that it is when it's experienced. When this decision happens and one begins to feed on that food from the Creator instead of this earthly feedings that are based on feeding these 4 different levels of the physical, the mental, the emotional, the transcendental. It's very difficult to put this stuff into words, but in a way, putting it into your own words is doing the teaching. The teaching is a very word of mouth. It's an oral transmitted thing, so it does help to put it into your own words. Even if you have a language problem, even if one has a speaking problem, it's good to communicate it somehow. Put it into communication. Perhaps some people can't speak it. Even if it requires for you to put into sign language, it does help to express it somehow. So that's where this one is right now, where it wants to hold on to that food from eggs, feeding on the love. And it's fine, the physical world is here. It's not as important as this one made it before. And this one does the real world first. And if you really look at it, it's like, it's not that important. This, whatever the physical world has to offer, it's not really that important. It's nice to have this life and enjoy the things in this physical world. It's nice. But that's not permanent. That's not the real thing.
It's so useful to actually do these journal entries, these little vlogs, because it does put all these things together. If it's not written down, this one forgets about it. And it goes away, and then 2 years pass, and this one is like, wow, what was it? It was very specific to get that real eye to pay attention. What was it again? Okay, so a lot of stuff that is repeated a lot, which this one is realizing, hey, I don't know much about that. Maybe I should take a look at that. Is this idea of the 2 worlds, the man-made world and the spiritual world. The real world is also called the spiritual world. Spiritual. So this one plans on looking at these 2 things, and this idea of the 4 great games, and I'm going to also add the 3 minds. I don't know if it's 3 or 4 minds, but it's a well-known thing where the man has more than one mind. And it's an assumption or a theory right now that the logical mind perhaps works more spiritually. Perhaps it's not a physical mind. And from the observations that happened, it's like this logical mind gets activated when this I comes back in the body, paying attention. And it's something that is a great interest to this one, and it has been experienced before for short periods of time. And okay, so this last observation was very interesting. It's also based on this love. This new purposeful living is connected to this way of love or understanding, where this one found it to her interest, best of interest, to live in love. To, yes, she wants to be aware, she wants to be alive, she wants to keep the mood up, but what's the purpose? To live in love, but for what purpose? To make a contribution, to share this love in everything she does, instead of sharing all these not eyes, all these demons, getting angry at people. Consciously make a decision to sharing that everlasting food that X feeds her with, that mana. And it's a new purpose. It's a conscious purpose, because it requires constant work from the morning when this one wakes up until the evening. Okay, so if along the way this one falls off of the radar, if this one falls out of the way, which was a lot of Jesus's followers, the way, I heard, developed this new, it wasn't a religion, but it was called the way of love, the way of love and understanding. So if this one falls out of that radar, the way of living this way of love and understanding, it helps to look at these situations, that side A and side B, this mess that this one is in, and disidentify from it, and come back on the way. Come back to the point where the observing eye is back in, paying attention. Repent, surrender. Another useful, very valuable, extremely valuable idea is this idea of disidentification, which it's very useful. Disidentification. Another thing added to the list to look into, extremely useful. When one falls out, or when one of these decisions come up, these not eyes as they're called, these demons come up, to disidentify from it. Realizing that's not me, that's just personality. That's it. That's all you need to do. Just see it. And then X hears it. X hears the feeling. See the feeling. See that the value of that. See the truth. See reality. That's not me, that's a demon. There's plenty of those. There's plenty of opportunity for that to happen throughout the day. And that's all. I think this video is going to be very long, but very useful observing realizations regarding resistance and this love. And right now, this way of consciousness or intelligence is a theory, but in a way, it is done, it is practiced to some degree, because you, Anna, this one, me, Lauren, it can do anything that she wants to do as long as it is done consciously. So living by this way of love or understanding, it does require a certain consciousness, a certain intelligence to say, hey, is that to my advantage or not? So in a way, this way of consciousness or intelligence is practiced, whether we like it or not. So let's keep at it. And that's it. Have an amazing day.